Hello, everyone. Let me tell you that I'm so happy to be greeting you again right from the start of another Oxygen XML Editor live event. My name is Alim Belu, and I am your host for this ongoing webinar series. And let me tell you that this week's installment is titled Creating and Designing JSON Schemas. In the following hour, my colleague, Octavian Nadolu, project manager at Synchrosoft, will showcase the powerful tools provided in Oxygen that allow you to design, develop, and edit JSON schemas. For this event, Octavian prepared a very generous agenda focusing on presenting features that range from the new intuitive and expressive visual schema design mode to the JSON schema documentation generator that includes diagram images for each component. I assure you that making the choice of joining us today will enhance your experience as an Oxygen user in an immeasurable way. So, to get things going, I want to share with you some useful information that you need to know about today's live event. As always, all of our webinars are being recorded, so this installment makes no difference. After the webinar comes to an end, the recording will be made available on the event page on our site, oxygenxml.com, along with Octavian's presentation slides and samples. And also, the recording will be uploaded on our YouTube channel titled Oxygen XML, which you might be accustomed with by now. And if not, I encourage you to take a look at it afterwards just to see the impressive library of tutorials that are available there for you. Another important aspect is that as we go along, we encourage you to ask us questions by using the questions panel from the GoToWebinar interface, where two of our other colleagues, Theo Templaru and Florin Nica, will assist us by answering to all of your questions in real time. And of course, we will be addressing those questions again at the end in a Q&A session, along with the latest entries, of course, for the benefit of everyone joining us today. Also, Octavian already uploaded in the handouts section from the GoToWebinar interface his presentation slides, so feel free to download them if you want. So, with this being said, let me welcome Octavian Nadolu to the virtual stage once again. Hi, Octavian.
Hello, Aline. Thank you for the presentation. Hello, everyone. So my name is Octavian Nadolu. I'm project manager and I'm working on Oxygen developing the mostly in the latest version the JSON part, but I work on the developer part of Oxygen. In this presentation, we'll discuss about JSON schema. We'll discuss how to create and design JSON schema, and I will focus on the new addition that we have in the latest Oxygen version. So this is the agenda of the presentation. We'll discuss a little bit about JSON schema specification, the changes that were made in the latest version of the JSON schema. Then we'll see how you can create and design JSON schema. We'll see the new refactoring actions and the new search actions that we added in the latest version. The tools that we also updated to use the latest version, the generate documentation, and the JSON schema in OpenAPI or Async API languages. So what is JSON schema? JSON schema is a vocabulary that allows you to annotate and validate JSON documents and can be used also for YAML documents. And this is a specification. It's an IETF specification. You can find more about this specification on the jsonschema.org website. You can find also some tutorials there and a lot of information about how to use JSON schema. The benefits of using JSON schema is to describe your API, to describe your data, and to provide human readable documentation. So everyone will understand the information that you expect or you want to send to an API. Then you can validate data you can check that the JSON data or the YAML data is according to a specific schema. And you can also make automatic testing. So you can generate based on JSON schema instances, for example, and then run this test automatically on a server. JSON schema is used in different places. So you can use, for example, to define the structure and use it to validate or constrain JSON documents. But it's used also in OpenAPI. So the latest OpenAPI API specification uses JSON schema 2012. And also in Async API, the JSON schema is used to define the components. In database, also if you are using JSON databases, JSON schema is used to validate the data from the database. There are different versions of the JSON schema. The most used are draft 4, 6, and 7. The latest drafts have some new additions and some changes that were made and started to be used more with OpenAPI now. In order to define that a JSON schema, a JSON is in fact a JSON schema, it's recommended to have this declaration in the JSON schema on the first level. So you need to add this $schema property with a value that will add also the version of the schema that you want to use. And according to this version and the declaration that you add, then the tools will identify that this is a JSON schema and the version that should be used in that schema. Here's an example of a JSON schema. It's draft 2012, so it's the latest draft. It's a simple schema. It has this declaration here. Then it defines that the instance should be an object, and then defines the properties from the object. And I added here just a simple property, product ID with the type integer. So this is the JSON instance that will be validated with this simple JSON schema. There are some changes, some structural changes that were made in the latest JSON schema version. I added here some of them. You can check the specification if you want to learn more about all the changes that were made in the latest drafts. So a change is on the definition containers. So in the previous drafts, we had these definitions. Now in the latest draft 2012, you can use these $defs. So the definition was renamed, but still the definition is a reserved keyword. So for backward compatibility, it will still be checked as a keyword. Then the items now are renamed in prefix items. So if you want to define an array and you specify the items and you specify for each of the item from the array a schema, now you need to use prefix items in the latest version. Otherwise, you can still use items to define a schema for all the items from the array. The additional items now are changed, renamed to items in the latest version. So you don't need to use the additional items anymore. You define directly the items and you specify the schema for the items. Dependencies were split in two components, two properties. You have these dependent schemas and dependent required. Then two new properties were added, unevaluated properties and unevaluated items. These are similar with the additional properties and additional items from the older versions. The change is that they can look in sub schema. So if you have like reference all off, so if you define sub schemas, then you can use these properties to make constraints more strict. Then max contains and min contains were added for arrays. Anchor was also added, dynamic anchor and dynamic ref, and also vocabulary. It's another keyword that was added in the latest version. In Oxygen, we do not support yet the vocabulary and the anchor. We intend to support in a future version. And also the dynamic ref, now it's supported as a simple ref, so it's not exactly according to the specification. So there are some limitations in the support that we provide right now for the validation, and you can check this also on our user manual. Before I continue, I have a question for you. Do you use JSON schema? And if you are using, what version do you use? And the answer will be no, I'm not using, or yes, I'm using draft 467, or yes, I'm using the latest draft, or yes, I'm using maybe other JSON schema version, maybe custom one. And you can use the questions panel if you want to give us more details about the JSON schema that you are using. I will leave this poll open so everyone will answer, and then I will share the results with you so everyone will see the results, so we can discuss about what version do you use, or if you are using or not JSON schema. So I'm not sure. I think most of you answered. We can share the results. So yeah, most of you are not using JSON schema. So I'll go slowly maybe on some parts so everyone will understand how to use JSON schema, and or maybe if you know how to use it, to know how to use it in Oxygen. Some of you are using the draft 4, 6, and 7, and some of you are using the latest draft. Pretty good results, so thank you. We can go forward. So JSON schema support in Oxygen. We have a specialized editor with various editing features and different pages that you can use to edit JSON schema. We have validation against JSON schema, so you can validate YAML or JSON documents with a JSON schema, and editing based on JSON schema. So we have content completion support and editing support for JSON documents based on JSON schema. And there are also some tools that were also updated for the latest drafts to generate documentation from a JSON schema. So if you want to publish your API in HTML format, you can use this tool and provide this on your website. Then we have support to generate sample files from a JSON schema. This can be used for testing purposes. You can also generate a JSON schema from a JSON file. So if you want to start learn how to create a JSON schema, you can just take a JSON file and start use this action to create your JSON schema, and then start developing your JSON schema from there. If you have an XSD, we have this XSD to JSON schema converter. And we added also a new tool that allows you to convert the JSON schema version draft 4, 6, or 7 to the latest drafts. For the editing part, there are 3 modes that you can use to edit JSON documents. So you have the text editing mode, the author, and the schema. For the text editing mode, we provide syntax highlighting, we provide an outline view that allows you to visualize the structure of the document, search and refactoring action, validation, formatting your document. I'll show you an example here. So I'll switch to Oxygen. I have here a JSON document, and we notice that this is a draft 7 JSON schema. we have the keywords with different colors. The properties that you define are different. Then when you edit this JSON schema, you'll have content completion, and you'll have also documentation for the properties that you insert. So based on the version that you use, you'll have this support available. Then you have this outline view that allows you to visualize the properties from the JSON schema, and you can also filter. So for example, you can search for a property very easy here in the ID. And this is synchronized with the editor. So every time you edit here something or add here a new property, automatically this will be added in the outline view. And even if you break the document, so if it will not be a well form, Oxygen will recover and will present correctly the property. Of course, we have validation against the JSON schema specification, and we provide the errors as you type here in the property. So, for example, if I type this object incorrect, then it will give me an error. You have also content completion on value, so I can set the type, for example, very easily here just by using this action. Then we have also the author editing mode. This is based on a CSS, so it presents the JSON like an HTML page, let's say, but it's interactive. So you can also make modification in the JSON schema. You can edit the documentation, and you can also customize how it will look in this author page. This is based on some CSS that are available in framework, and everyone will are able to customize this. So if I go in Oxygen and I switch this JSON schema to the author page, it looks something like this. And I have here the version. I can change the version, and I get errors directly here in the author page. I can edit the documentation, let's say something here, and this is synchronized automatically with the text page. So we'll have here the information added. I can navigate through links here, and I can visualize the properties from my JSON schema. And all of this, as I told you, can be customized, so you can customize it as you want, colors or layout or actions, in-place actions for your JSON schema documents. Then there is the design mode. The design mode is specially created to visualize the structure of the JSON schema. You have in-place actions, you have a palette view, so you can easily create new components. You have refactoring actions, and you can even save this diagram as an image and export it and share it with someone. So if I switch this to the design mode, it will look something like this. So I can see the properties very easily. I can navigate through the components, and I have here in the left the palette view that presents the components that are available for my JSON schema, and I can easily drag and drop components from here and insert it to create new properties in my JSON schema. And depending on the version that you use, automatically the diagram and the actions from the contextual menu are reconfigured. So if I change this to draft 4, or if I go to the latest draft, then I'll have other properties here. So for example, for the latest draft, I have prefix items, I have defs, I have unevaluated properties, and for draft 7, this will not be displayed anymore, but I will have, for example, dependencies. So depending on the version that you're using, automatically the JSON schema diagram will be reconfigured, and all the actions will be provided accordingly to the specification that is set. So To exemplify how to use this JSON schema, let's create a new schema from scratch. Let's say I have this JSON document that contains product ID, product name, price, and some tags. And we want to have a JSON schema that will check the structure to be like this. So first of all, I will create a new JSON schema document. We'll go here in project, let's say new file, select JSON schema, type a name, let's say product. Then we can use this customize page if you want to specify the version. Let's say we want to create using the latest version. So we have a template here. By default, this is created as a JSON schema object with a property here called property name. And we have the version added here on the root. So first we want to add the property for the product ID, which should be a numeric value and should be a required property in my instance. I already have here a property, so I'll just change the name to product ID. I will set the type, so I want to be an integer, and I want to also to mark it as required. For this, I will use this contextual menu mark required action, and this will be made bold here, and a required property will be added on the schema. So now I have the product ID. Next, I want to have also the product name, and I want the product name to be a string and also to be a required value. So I'll drag and drop a new property from here. And we see that I'm not allowed to add here the property, so I need to add it. I'm allowed to add it only in some valid places here, so in the properties container. And now I can type the name, product name, and I can set the value to be a string, and also mark it as required. And the line is made bold now. You have also the other action to make it optional that will remove it from the required keywords. So you can also use these actions here. Next, we want the price. This should be a number, also required, and should be greater than 0. So I'll add a new property here just by drag and drop. Set price. This should be a number. Select the type from here. And I want to have the value greater than 0. For this, I will use the contextual menu, edit properties, and I will edit the properties for this component. It will present only the properties that are available for this type, for the number type. So I want to have exclusive minimum 0. This is added automatically in the diagram, and I want to mark it also as required, so I'll use the same action that will mark as required. Then I want to add the tags. The tags should be an array of strings, and I want to be unique items, so I don't want to have the same tag twice in the array, and I want to have at least one tag in the array. So for this, I'll add a new property here, say tags. Then the type of the tags, we said that should be an array. And I'll add the type of the items from the array. I'll use the edit properties, set the type to string. And then I want to edit the properties here and specify that I want to have unique items. So this time I get the properties that are for the array type. So I want to have unique items true. And I want to have at least one item. So the minimum items here should be 1. So now we have our schema. We can save it, and now we can use it, for example, to validate an instance, something like this. So we can associate this with our schema, use the relative path. This I added the association directly in the instance, but you can also use the validation scenario to associate the schema. Then now if I make a modification here, for example, if I change this to string, it will automatically say that I'm not allowed to do this. Or if I'm removing some of the properties that are required automatically, this will be triggered and the validation will say that this value should be added. And the content completion will present automatically also the properties that are required for my uh, schema. So you can use the JSON schema diagram to create a new document very easily from scratch. You can use the palette view to easily add new components. We have this document template that allows you to specify the version. You have in place actions. You can change the names very easily, and you can easily drag the components and create more complex schemas just by using this diagram view. You can also use the actions, contextual menu actions to append components. If you don't want to use the palette view, you have the actions available also in the contextual menu. And there are also other actions that allows you to refactor your schema, to extract as a definition, to extract in another file if you want. I'll tell you a few things also about the components that we use in the diagram. So the schema component is the root, and this contains the declaration of the schema that we seen when we created our schema. Then we have the properties group, which contains a set of properties for an object. In case you are using definitions, you need to use this definitions group, or in the latest draft, the defs group. So for example, if we go here in our schema and we want to, we can extract this, for example, in a definition. So we can use the refactoring action, extract. We can set a name for the extracted definition. And now we have a reference to these definitions in the dev folder. And I can extract then another one, and it will go in the same definition. So if you are using definitions and you want to reuse this definition for multiple properties, then you can use this defs group here, or the definitions for the older version. Pattern properties, in case you want to define properties with a pattern name. Then in a properties group, you can define properties as we seen. Then definitions can be added in a definitions group, and we've seen how you can have a definitions there. Pattern properties are added for object and are added in a pattern properties group. There is also the additional properties and unevaluated properties components. The additional properties will allow you to specify a definition for the additional properties that are allowed in your schema. Unevaluated properties are similar with the additional properties, but can look in sub-schema. So it can look in a referenced or other schemas that you have defined. And this can be used also for the latest versions. Other components for the arrays, we have these arrays, this items definition. So in case you want to have a specified definition for the items, you need to use this items component and specify the definition there. In case you want to specify a definition for each item from the array, you need to use for older version the same items component. For newer version, you need to use the prefix items. So this is the change for the newer version. Then the additional items in the new version, you don't need to use it. You can use directly the items definition. And the unevaluated items, which is similar to the additional items, but it can look in declared subschemas. There are also compositions, so you can use all of, one of, or any of. In case you want, for example, data to be valid against some definition, set of definitions, you can use this all of, and then the data will be validated against all the definitions that you have there. One of can be used when you want to be valid against only one definition, exactly one, and any of in case you want to be valid against any of the definitions that you have in this composition. Not can be used when the data should not be valid against that definition. There are also conditional components. So you have if then else that can be used in a JSON schema, and there is also the dependent schemas and dependent required that can be used to specify conditionally if, for example, if you want to specify if a property is present, then another property should be also present, or if a property is present, then a specific schema should be used. I will not go into many details here, but you can find on the jasonschema.org a lot of examples, and there's a tutorial there that will go through this. It will take time to explain all these properties. What I want to emphasize is that you have these components that you can use. So if you want to create your schema, you can just drag and drop these components from the palette view, and you have also documentation for them, and you can read more about directly in the diagram. Before I continue, I have another question for you. Do you use or intend to use JSON schema, and how do you intend to use it? So to validate, for example, JSON documents, or to define an API using async API or OpenAPI, or just using JSON schema, or maybe you want to use it for a database, or if you have other use cases, you can use the questions panel and provide the answers there if you want. I'll leave these two for a few moments so everyone will answer the poll, and then I'll share the results with you. I will see how many of you and how are using JSON schema or intend to use. They are still answering the questions. We'll leave this for a few more moments. I think we can stop the poll, share the results. Thank you for answering. So I see that most of you are want to use or intend to use or are using with to validate JSON documents or to define APIs. There are some of you that are using or want to use in databases, and there are also some other use cases that I didn't add it here. So will be interesting if you want to share this with us. So we can go further. Visualizing and editing more complex schemas. So sometimes you can have complex schemas, maybe generated, or maybe you have schemas that you want to create, or you convert from XSD or from other schema languages. In Oxygen, you can edit also more complex schemas. We have smart navigation. You can expand, collapse. You can go to references. And in the latest version, we added also support to search for references in a provided scope or to rename components in a provided scope. So we added the refactoring actions that will allow you to work with this type of schemas. And also we added support to extract definition in a separate file. I'll show you some examples. So let me close these files here. I have here the product schema, which is similar with the one that we created earlier, but this time has also some references. So you can add the reference to a definition that it's in a separate file. So it's in the dimension JSON schema file. And you can click this link to navigate, and it will automatically navigate to the definition and will open the file where the schema is created. Then to determine from where this property is used, in case the definition is used, you can use the contextual menu and search. And because I don't know where this is used, I can search in a scope. So I can search, for example, in the project to check from where this property is used. And I noticed that it's used from two places. So there are two files that refers this property, this definition. So I want to make sure that every time when I make a modification in this, if I modify, for example, the name of the definition, the validation will tell me that I need to change also the references. So for this, you can create a validation scenario that will specify the main files that should be validated. So the main files from this, from where this file is referred. And I can specify the two files here. So I add one main file being the product schema new, and the other, the second file, the product schema. And now, if I make a modification here in the document, so for example, I change this, automatically it will tell me that the document will not be valid because this will be this is referred in two places and the definition is not found anymore. So you can use this validation support in order to make sure that you make when you make a modification, this will be valid. And then you can use refactoring actions, for example, to make this modification without breaking the references. You can use this rename component in, and you can specify here a new name for this definition, and then you can preview the modification. So I can see that the modification is made in this schema, the definition is changed here, and another reference here. So I can easily change this reference here, and then I'm sure now that the modification that is made in all the schemas, and the schemas are kept valid. You can also use the other search actions now. So if you define the main files for your schema, then this will be automatically used when you search for the new schema and you do not provide a scope. So I'll get the same results here. And also the other action will work, the validation, and will work with the main files that you define here. I have another schema here that is more complex, the UBL schema, where there are a lot of modules. And Oxygen allows you to visualize this schema, and you can easily navigate. You can use the keyboard, for example, to navigate to the components. You can expand very easily and collapse components. You can navigate to the modules, so you can navigate to references. And you can also use these actions to search for the references. So I can use the search references and I can search from where this property, where this definition is used. And I see that it's used in multiple places. I can search also for these references. Let's see from where this property, so it has 91 references, and then it's hard to make a modification in all the references. If you want to rename this, you can do it very easy using this new action and preview the modification. And we can notice that there are a lot of files where you need to make a modification in case you want to make a rename. So this action is very useful. All the refactoring actions that we provide in the JSON schema diagram in the latest version are very useful when you are using big schemas and more complex schemas. There are also actions that allow you to refactor your schema. So for example, we can go here to the product schema and you can use extract definition in current file or extract definition in another file. So if you want to have this in a separate file, the definition of price, you can choose a different file. Say we want to create a new schema called price, and automatically this will be added to the new schema, and you can specify the name, which is price def, and you can also navigate to this reference if you want. You can use these actions from here to go back and forward to the location where you've been before. So it's easy to refactor your schema now. It's easy to search for references, to rename a component, and you can search in the entire project, or you can define a scope where you want to search in. The tools that we use in Oxygen were also updated, so to support the latest version. The generate documentation, the generate sample files also support all the versions. Generate JSON schema or XSD to JSON schema converter. And also we have this new action that allows you to convert a JSON schema to a new version. You can find information about these tools in our user manual. I want to focus only on the latest one that we added. I'll not exemplify all of them because it will take some time. Okay, so we have here an example with schema that is draft 4. So I can use the tools, JSON tools. Here we find all the actions for the JSON schema, and we can use this convert schema. We can specify the schema that we want to convert, and then we can specify the version that we want to use for the converted schema, and hit convert, overwrite the result. And we see here that we have the new schema. I can expand it to see all the properties, and I can put it side by side maybe. So now the version is changed. We see that the items is converted to prefix items. The dependencies now are split in dependence requires and dependent schemas. The definitions is changed to defs. So all the modifications that we need to make to convert it to the new schema are made just by using this action. So if you want to convert your schema to the new versions, feel free to use it. The generate schema documentation tool was also updated to use the latest version. So you can now generate, for example, for our product schema, let's say for this one, we can generate the documentation using the generate documentation action from the toolbar. We can specify a folder, let's say doc and then we can specify what we want to have in the documentation, or if we want to have split it in multiple files, if we want to have the annotation, the source code. I'll just leave all of the components added here, hit generate, and we have this nice visual mode also added here, the diagrams, and the diagrams also can be clicked, so we can navigate to references very easily just by clicking these links here. And we can see also the source code. We can also have we have also some buttons here that allows you to collapse or expand some parts of the schema. And we can also navigate up just by clicking these properties in the HTML file. So this HTML can be published anywhere, and anyone can read the documentation, can read your schema, and can understand your API or how the document should be added. As I told you, you can generate it in one file, or you can split it in multiple files. You can also customize them after you generate the HTML file. It's easy to just add some more information than if you want. I'll talk also a little bit about OpenAPI, Async API, and JSON LD, and how this interacts with JSON schema. So OpenAPI uses JSON schema to describe data from response and requests. And in the latest version, JSON schema was added as in the specification. So OpenAPI 3.1 supports JSON schema 2012, so the latest version. Async API uses JSON schema, but it's a superset, so it's not really according to the specification. It has some additions, but it uses JSON schema specification draft 7. For JSON LD, it's a vocabulary that allows you to use JSON schema to validate JSON LD documents. There is a JSON LD schema that can be used. This is added in Oxygen, and if you open a JSON LD document, it will be validated accordingly to this schema. But of course, you can customize this document to be more accurate for you. And I'll show you some examples here. So I have here an OpenAPI document, and if I open it, we have here in the components, we have these schemas where it's a JSON schema defined for the components, and this is referred from the response or request. So it's referred from this part, from the response, for example, here. And you can edit these JSON schema documents. These are validated according to the OpenAPI specification. But you can also have this JSON schema added in a separate file. For example, for the user, I added a reference to a JSON schema that it's in a separate file here. And then you can open this JSON schema and edit it directly in the diagram. So if you want to have a better way to edit your document, your JSON schema document, you can also refer it from the JSON from the OpenAPI, and then you'll be able to use the diagram and the validation and the full support that we have from the JSON editor. Then for the Async API, also have an example here. So in Async API, also you have these schemas where you can add the schemas that can be used. These are referred also from the Open API, from the Async API, and here you have support to edit also the schemas. You have annotations, links to the specification, so you can edit the JSON schema also here. But you can also have it in a separate file if you want to have a better way to edit it. For JSON LD, when you open a JSON LD document, we automatically determine that it's a JSON LD document, and we validate this with the JSON LD schema. But you can also customize this to be, depending on your need, to be more appropriate. Maybe check the properties that are added here. Maybe you want some specific properties, and this can be done very easily, but by extending the JSON LD framework from here, where we specify for the validation part, we specify the JSON LD schema, but you can also change it to have your own schema. Of course, you can use frameworks to add any JSON schema for any type of JSON. So you can define your own vocabulary. You just need to create a JSON schema, and if you want to Oxygen to detect it automatically, you can just create a framework, specify the schema there, and then you just open and edit the documents in Oxygen. You'll have validation, you'll have content completion, and all the support that we have for other languages that I presented here. Then you can also batch validation, so you can validate multiple files, and you can do this from the project view. So for example, you can go here in the project, just select a folder and use the validate action, and you'll validate automatically all the files from that project according to the schemas that they have associated, and you get a result. But you can also use the Oxygen scripting. So in the latest version, we added this validation script in the Oxygen script tool, and you can use it to automatically make validation on a continuous integration server, for example. If you want to check the files automatically according to a JSON schema, you can use this validate tool. You can find more about this in our user manual, how to use it, what type of validation you can use, how you can present the results. So you have different different support to present the results and how you can associate your schemas. I will have also a presentation about this, but this will be in January, I think. Aline will tell you more about this at the end. So you can use also this scripting support if you want to validate your JSON schemas using our validation support. So as a conclusion, we provide complete support for JSON schema. We have a specialized editor, a JSON schema editor with text page, author page, or a design page. We have validation support. This is based on the Everett engine, and we have also support for the latest JSON schema versions. We added refactoring actions that will allow you to create your JSON schema and to change your JSON schemas, and a lot of tools that allow you to convert to JSON schema or generate instances. Of course, we have also a lot of future plans, so we want to improve our support, and we wait for your feedback. We want to improve the JSON schema diagram to have also validation for properties directly in the diagram, to add more actions, refactoring actions. So we have a lot of features also on this part. We intend to improve also the text page to have a more accurate validation, and editing may be based on a specialized JSON schema. We intend to add full support for JSON schema 2012. So as I told you, there are some features that are not supported yet. Also intend to improve our support for OpenAPI and Async API. I will tell you next week in the next webinar more about what support we have and what we want to do next. Another important feature will be to flatten schema and also content completion for YAML based on JSON schema. I have a question for you here. Which of these are the most important for you? The answer is improve JSON schema diagram, maybe add some actions, or improve the JSON schema page if you are JSON schema text page in case you are using the text page to edit JSON schema, or full support for the latest version, or maybe you want better OpenAPI Async API support, or if you have other suggestions, you can use the questions panel and provide the answers there. I will share also the answer with you. So at the end, we'll see which are the most important for you. And depending on your answer, we'll consider to implement this in the future versions. So share the results. Okay, so most of you want full support for the latest version. Great. So we'll need to focus on this. Also, the diagrams, it's important, and the text page and the async API. And so that also there are some other use cases. So we'll see probably in the questions panel these new these features that you want to implement. Of course, you can also send us your feature requests on the support, and we'll consider it to implement in future versions. So we wait for your feedback. Added also some resources here to the Oxygen schema editor if you want to read more, and to the user guide if you want to learn more about the support that we have. The JSON schema website, which is very important if you want to learn more about the JSON schema and the specification, and also the Async API and OpenAPI websites. There are also a lot of video demos, added some of them here. If you want to check more about palette view or the author or the tools or the validation support, you can check these video demos. So thank you very much for staying and for attending to this webinar. Now we have time for questions. So if you have questions, you can address it and add it in the questions panel. And Aline will read the questions that you add, and I will answer to them.
Thank you. Thank you, Octavian. I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No, it's okay. Thank you.
I wanted to thank you for another great presentation. And exactly as you said, now it's time to jump to the questions panel, because a lot of people from our audience asked questions during today's event. One such question is from Joseph. Is it also possible to define product name not to be empty? And Joseph has a short answer: yes, you can do this by invoking the context menu action, edit properties, and then to edit the min length property. Did I say this correct, Octavian?
Yes. In the properties, you can specify a property for the product name, and here you have the min length, and you can specify the minimum length for your string here. So you can add constraints, yes, to the string.
Thank you. Rob is telling us that he's looking forward to being able to flatten JSON schema. So this will be exciting.
I will add
Um,
a plus on to our feature request. So thank you for your feedback. I think it's important to have this action.
Pasquale is asking you the following. Do you plan to expose some of the features of your product as an API, either server-based or, for example, exposed as an NPM?
We intend to provide the validation support. We have this scripting product that is available right now, so you can use the validation using the script. I'm not sure what other part we can expose, but we think to have this also as an API in future versions. Yes.
Serge, both Serge and John are thanking you for your presentation. Excellent presentation, actually. Um,
Thank
and
you. It's too much.
the next question is from Alessandro. Do you have a graphical representation also for the JSON document or only for the JSON schema? And I can answer this only for JSON schema.
Yes, for JSON document, we do not have a graphical representation, but we have this author mode that can be customized to be according to your needs. So can be customized similarly to the product schema if you want, but we do not have this graphical representation for JSON documents. It's an idea, so yeah.
Thank you. We have another question from Jerome. Can we use SharePoint as a data CCMS with Oxygen as the XML editor?
I think yes, we have a connector with SharePoint, and I think it can be used. Yes.
Another question from Jason this time. Can Oxygen convert between YAML and JSON?
Yes, we have in the tools menu, we have the JSON tools here, and we have support to convert from JSON to XML or from JSON to YAML or from XML to YAML. So we have different conversion, and we have also batch conversion. So in the project, you can use the batch convert to convert from this uh, uh, from this type of files. But in order to use the batch converter, you need to install the plugin. So I don't have installed the plugin, but you have here the install add-ons, and here you'll have the batch converter if you want to use it to convert multiple files once.
Thank you for your question, Jason. And also, Jason is thanking you, Octavian, for your in-depth and thorough reply. We have a few questions left. Can we search for JSON schema references in a specific folder?
Yes, you can use Oxygen to search in a specific working set. So for example, let's say we want to search for this definition. We can use this search action here, and when you use search reference in, you can specify that you want to search in the project, but you can also define an working set. And in this working set, you can add the resources as the folders. So you can specify that you want to search, for example, in the product folder or in the samples folder. So I defined an working set, I can set a name here, and then I can search directly in that working set.
Another quick question. How can I make sure that I renamed all the references?
The best way to do this is to use the refactoring, the rename component action. This will search automatically in the project or in an working set. So this will make sure that all the references will be renamed. If you want to add another level and check if all the references are renamed, you can configure a validation scenario that will validate also all the modules and will check also the references. So we can configure a validation scenario as I did for this module, and I specify the main files that needs to be validated. And you can configure this also from the project. So I can specify here on the entire folder a validation scenario, and I can specify that I want to validate using a specific scenario that defines those main files. So you can use also the validation in the project, and this will make sure.
And another question, can I validate multiple JSON documents with a JSON schema?
Yes, you can do this. You can do this from project. So you can select, for example, the files that you want to validate. You can also select folders, and then you can use this validate action from here. And you can specify a schema that you want to validate with, or you can configure a validation scenario and validate with that. So if I go here, I can specify that I want to use a JSON schema and then validate with that specific schema all the files that I selected. So yeah, you can do this. And you can do this also with scripting support. So similar, you can validate your JSON documents with a JSON schema using the scripting support.
And let's go to what it seems to be our last question for today. And it's good because it will be a nice transition to the last part of our today's event. Will this webinar be recorded and made available for future viewing? The short answer is yes. There is a lot of valuable information presented here that I'd love to refer back to, David is telling us. And with your permission, Octavian, I will take control and we'll expand on this a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Aline.
Thank you. Okay, so as you can see, this webinar is indeed being recorded, and you will find the recording along with Octavian's sample files and presentation slides on this very event page starting tomorrow. And if you have any comments or questions regarding Octavian's presentation, you can write to us directly by using the Oxygen feedback commenting platform found at the bottom of this very same page. So before saying goodbye, let me say a few words about our upcoming live events where you can meet the rest of the Oxygen team. But first, Octavian will return next week on December 14th with the OpenAPI support in Oxygen. And during this live webinar, you will discover the support offered in Oxygen for OpenAPI documents, as well as how to create, edit, test, and generate documentation for OpenAPI documents. As you can see, this will be the last event of the year, but right at the beginning of next year on January 11th, Octavian will return with his validating XML and JSON documents using Oxygen scripting webinar that he actually mentioned earlier. Because with the latest release of the Oxygen suite of products, additional support was developed for validating XML and JSON files via Oxygen XML scripting. So this webinar will cover details about this newly implemented validation scripting support, as well as showing examples of how to use it as efficiently as possible. And also we won't be stopping there, as we will also be looking at how you can use transformation or comparison scripts. And the last scheduled event up until now, it will be on January 25th, and it will be presented by our colleague Bogdan Dumitru. and it's called What's New in Oxygen XML Web Author 25.0. And during this live webinar, you will discover the new features included in the latest release of Oxygen XML Web Author related to data map files editing, as well as other general enhancements that will improve your editing experience regardless of the edited document type. Also, we encourage you to take a look at our events page. You can see the link here below, where you can also find the ways to register for free to all of our future events. And of course, keep an eye on that page because more events will be scheduled in the near future. So now, as a few closing words, I want to tell you how grateful I am for all of you to be joining us again today. I hope that all of you had a great time and that you enjoyed the presentation brought to you by Octavian. Again, a big thank you, Octavian.
Thank you, Aline. Thank you, everybody, for attending to this webinar, and I also wait for your feedback.
And also a big thank you to Theo and Florine that were behind the scenes to make sure that all of your questions were answered in real time as Octavian was presenting. And in conclusion, we have some great events ahead of us, and I hope that some of you will be able to join us again for those ones also. Until next time, stay safe and have a nice day or evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.